All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Olivia Berlin. I'm one of our college advisors here at Logic Prep. I'm going to be hosting today's webinar, helping facilitate for Lauren and Mattie, who will be providing most of the content and answers to all of your questions throughout the hour that we have together. Today's webinar is specifically focused on our rising seniors who are starting your application cycle. So many of you may have already had your kickoff meeting with your own college advisor with Logic Prep. If you have not yet, you probably will have it very soon. And so we're going to be going over a lot of the same types of things that you might talk about in your kickoff webinar or in your kickoff meeting with your advisor, but just giving you an opportunity to ask additional questions, get perspective from someone who is not your advisor, just get more information about what's coming up for you over the next year from this April to the following April. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. Our panelists today, as I mentioned, are Lauren, our Director of College Advising, who has direct admissions experience working at Williams College in Massachusetts, and Mattie, who is one of our LP College Advisors. She is a former admissions officer from Pitzer College in California. Lauren and Mattie, would each of you like to take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you this evening. I have been doing this, as Olivia said. First, I started at Williams in admissions. I've worked in a range of different college advising settings since then. I've probably read and evaluated overall a couple 100,000 essays and applications in my many years of doing this. So I'm thrilled to be here with Mattie and Olivia tonight talking with you.
And hey, everybody, my name is Mattie. It's nice to see some familiar names, at least on the list of some of my students, and welcome everybody, of course. Like Lauren, I come with a background in admissions, obviously, and like Olivia had mentioned, I used to work at one of the Claremont colleges named Pitzer College, and then I transitioned to another small liberal arts college called Colorado College. So come with experience from highly selective liberal arts colleges, and so excited to impart some knowledge to you all.
Awesome. Thank you both. All right, Lauren, take it away.
So as Olivia said, this is mostly for rising seniors, but we hope the information will be widely applicable. And what we want to cover tonight, I'm giving you kind of the bird's eye view, the overview, and then we're going to get into more detail as we go through. We're going to talk a little bit about application preparation and some of the elements that go into that. We're going to help you better understand what a holistic review process is, how your applications literally get evaluated when they land in the admissions office. We're going to talk about the various components of the application. And for this evening, we're talking mostly about the common application, which is the most widely used application platform. We're also hopefully going to help you understand how to stand out, how to impress, make an impression on the reader of your application. And then we're going to go into a little bit more depth and detail on different application deadlines so that you can be better informed and make some good choices going through this process.
All right, everybody, we're talking about application preparation. So we wanted to run through the next couple of months that leads you into actually applying for college and what is to be expected from you beforehand, and also the conversations that you're going to have with your college advisor. So from spring, the moment that we're currently in, to midsummer, students are going to be doing college research. A lot of students have already started with this process prior to this season. And essentially this just entails having a college list that your advisor crafts for you, and the student will watch various virtual tours, look up data about those colleges, and make their own determination about the fit alongside their college advisor, who has experience with these colleges and might be able to help the student out in that regard too. So there's a lot of this like college list cultivation. And then we also encourage students to demonstrate interest in these schools. That has become such an important factor at many of these institutions. They want to know if a student's actually interested in them. It's definitely not tracked all over the place, but at some institutions, they will track this interest. And so a lot of students in this spring to midsummer arena. They will visit colleges. They will actually go on to a campus visit, do an official information session tour. And then we also encourage a lot of virtual engagement too. So signing up for those virtual information sessions are an important way to demonstrate interest, taking the virtual tour, and interviewing as well. I'm going to talk about interviews in a second. Our students are going to also start working on their essays. And this year we are starting to have our essay coaches work with our students in June. A couple students might be working a bit earlier, but most of our students are going to be working in June. And they're going to initially be working on their personal statement, which is that main essay. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but the main essay that goes off to all of their colleges. And then after the summer season, they'll start working on their supplemental essays. The common application goes live on August 1st. And so that's when our advisors and students can log in and see what the various colleges are asking for the supplemental essays. And then in this season as well, we are having students request teacher recommendation letters. Every student needs to have 2 teachers write them a letter, typically. Some colleges also allow for an additional letter of recommendation. It doesn't have to be a teacher, but that's an option. At least in May, what we're looking for our students to do is just get verbal confirmation. And then lastly, for this season, we are hoping that students can finish up standardized testing so that we can look forward and try to decide if the student is going to be sending their test scores to XYZ school that they're applying to, or if they're going to decide to go test optional, which is definitely an option for many of these schools this year, thankfully, for many of our students. So that's spring to midsummer. And then midsummer to early fall, we are looking to have our students finalize their college list. And this helps us start to create a strategy, where are we going to apply early decision, early action, regular decision, and we're going to get to those various deadlines in this webinar. So we're hoping to finalize the college list. And by the way, for Logic Prep, that includes 12 schools. Determining application strategies, as I mentioned, and then finishing up the personal statement and starting to work on those supplemental essays. Supplemental essays, by the way, are required by many, many colleges, not all. Northeastern University is an example of a school that doesn't have a supplemental essay, but a majority of the colleges that our students are applying to will require an additional essay on top of the personal statement. And oftentimes it's like, why Boston College, or tell me more about an extracurricular activity. It just depends on what that specific college values. And then lastly, I had mentioned interviews. This is a time where a lot of institutions will open up interview opportunities for students to go in and register for an interview. And those tend to be 30 to 45 minutes long, where a student meets one-on-one with either a senior who goes to that college or an admission counselor that works in the admissions office. And it's a really nice casual opportunity to get to learn more about the school, but also for that college to learn more about the student. So there's that mutual relationship there. And our advisors will prep the student for those interview opportunities. We do mock interviews for students as well. And yeah, really great opportunity for a student to also demonstrate interest. A majority of these interviews, by the way, at least at some of the most selective institutions, they tend to happen after a student applies. So a student applies and then an alumnus or an alumna in that specific region will reach out to the student and then ask if they want to interview and get more information, et cetera. There are various schools, like I'd mentioned, though, that you can sign up beforehand. So anyways, these are conversations that will happen in the midsummer to early fall season. And then lastly, we have fall to January and beyond. We're hopeful by then that most students are done with their essays because that's when all the deadlines happen. The first deadline, I think one of our slides talks about deadlines, so we're going to talk about that. But the first deadline that I know about, it's in October. It's about mid-October for a couple of institutions. UNC Chapel Hill and Clemson are a couple on my mind for October, but majority of students are going to apply by November 1st if they're deciding to opt into an early application round, early decision or early action. And that's, like I'd mentioned, November 1st. So we want all essays to be done by then, hopefully. And then, yeah, we encourage students to submit application 10 days prior for that deadline. So if a student's, say, going to be applying to Colorado College by November 1st, we want that application to be in 10 days prior. And that's very intentional. We want the application to be submitted we want a student to log into their applicant portal, which is a website that all these colleges provide students these days, so that they can monitor an application checklist and see what's missing for their application. And so that 10 days window gives us the opportunity to turn in any missing materials at that point. And especially for international students, there are like various forms that students need to fill out. So having that 10-day window is really nice to get all that stuff in. Interviews as well, that continues on into the fall season. And then deferral strategy. November 1st, students apply early decision, early action. We're going to talk about what the difference between that in a second. They could very well be deferred from the early round. And all that means is that the college is withholding their decision at that moment. And they're saying, we need to re-review your application in the regular decision round. And so a student could be deferred, and with that comes expressing more interest in the college through a deferral form, having maybe an additional letter of recommendation sent to the school, continuing to demonstrate interest through virtual sessions, things like that. So anyways, I'm talking a lot about these things, but those are things that the college advisor will work on with the student, is to further express interest in the school, and then maybe also talk about like, okay, now that you've been deferred, what other maybe schools do you want to look at, or maybe do you want to elevate a certain regular decision application to early decision 2? You know, there's things that can change as we go along this fun adventure called the college application process. So I think now, and please also post your questions in our Q&A. Lauren's going to talk about the holistic review process.
I actually, if you can just go back for a second, Olivia, I just want to say a couple things, just following up on this slide. Mattie obviously shared incredibly important information. As she was talking, I realized I should have said this at the get-go. We know that this process is completely anxiety provoking. There is a lot of information. There is a lot of detail. I want to really reassure you, you do not need to memorize all of this. We will help each student and each family navigate this in their own way and on their own timeline. And what I mean by that is that these are really important goals, these dates that we've outlined, but we also understand that each student has individual frameworks, individual pressures, individual things that are taking their time. So we really want to work with you to personalize this process as much as possible, so that these things that in aggregate, when you're looking at them, can seem very overwhelming, become very manageable, because you're working on them kind of one by one with your advisor. So Mattie, thank you for all of that information, and we will get there with all of you throughout the process of this journey. So there's a lot of mystique around the holistic review process. You're going to hear this phrase spoken about every information session you go to, pretty much. The admission officer is going to be referencing their holistic review process. And ultimately, what does that mean, and how does it impact you and your application? Basically, in an admission office, and whoever is reading your application is reading your specific application. They may have a stack of 40 applications they have to get through in a given day, but their attention is focused solely on you. They are looking to understand what about you is unique, is compelling, is interesting, is quirky, is going to potentially make an impact on that college campus and that college environment. So they're really focused on you as an individual. However, they're also looking at what the entire entering class is going to look like. We have a lot of students who come to us horribly anxious that they haven't done any community service, or that they're not leaders in their clubs and activities. I want to assure you that no college campus wants to admit a class of leaders. The entire composite, the entering class, is going to be made up of people from all different backgrounds, all different personalities, socioeconomic statuses, cultures, ethnicities, identities, leadership styles. So it's really about looking at you as an individual, looking at you then in the context of that entire applicant pool in terms of figuring out where you might surface and how you might balance out that entering class. It's also important to know that you're being looked at within your setting. We get the question a lot from students. My school doesn't have as many AP classes, or my school grades more harder, more, the grading is more difficult at my school than it is at other schools. Admission officers are very savvy. They have a good sense of the different schools, the schools that students are applying from. They have relationships with particular schools. Schools also, every high school has what they call a profile, which they will send along with your transcript and other school supported materials. That helps any reader who may for any reason not be familiar with your school understand what the culture and climate of your home high school is, the kinds of students who attend, the size, the kinds of courses that are available, the average or the mean or median GPA or SAT or ACT scores. So that also can be very useful. But basically the question admission officers are asking themselves is, what is the student's academic setting and how have they taken advantage of that? And what I mean by that is if you're in a setting with rigorous coursework, with a lot of opportunities to challenge yourself intellectually and extracurricularly, how have you engaged with those opportunities? I don't want to instill fear. This is not at all to say that every student has to take all AP classes or take all HL level IB courses. What this means, colleges want to see that students have challenged themselves appropriately, that in the areas that are strengths of yours, you're pushing yourself to learn more and engage more, that you're measuring yourself in terms of not overextending yourself academically, and that you're doing as well as you can in the most rigorous academic setting that is appropriate for you personally. One of the things, and I think sometimes the hardest thing for families to understand and know about this process, is that ultimately the outcome of this process is largely out of your control. You work very hard all through high school. You've created a strong portfolio of academics and activities. You're an amazing person. You're funny, you're kind. You may be infinitely admissible to the schools on your list, and that doesn't necessarily mean you will be admitted. Part of that is that there are institutional priorities that might override some of the other elements that you personally may present in this process. So, for example, if a college just opened up a brand new science building, they might be looking to bring in a lot of science research students. If there's a new orchestra, maybe they need cellists. These are things that are outside of your control and are definitely going to impact admission decisions. And Mattie is going to talk a little bit about the aspects of the application that go into the evaluation process.
Yes, thank you, Lauren. The Common Application, the lovely Common App. I think the Common App serves maybe 900 plus colleges at this point. So like Lauren mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, it's probably the most widely used application platform in the United States. And it's also what we use to base all of our application prep on pretty much when we're working with a student, is prepping for this main Common Application. There are some other applications that we do definitely work on with students, including the University of California being one of those bigger applications. Georgetown University has its own app. So there are those like idiosyncrasies, but the Common App's the big one. And there's various information that's collected by the Common App. But the most obvious demographic information is there. It's very easy to fill out. I always tell my students it's going to take you 10 minutes or less to fill the demographic information. It's asking where the student lives, their nationality, their ethnic background, The languages that they speak, that's often a cool thing for admission advisor or counselors to see. Gender identity, their socioeconomic and educational status. And so like Lauren was talking about diversity and that these schools want to bring people from different backgrounds. And, oftentimes that's not just ethnicity, that's also socioeconomic. They want a diverse class in that regard as well. And then educational status, that could be if a student's the first in their family to go to college, that's something that a college campus could value. So they're assessing all of these things and making connections with the institutional priorities there that Lauren was talking about earlier. The Common App also asks for academic information. So we have the school, obviously they want to know what school the student attends, and then the curriculum associated with that. So in the Common App, it will ask, what are your current classes? And what they're really wanting to know is for 12th grade, the senior year, the last year of high school, what curriculum is this student presenting? Because the college that is reading the application might not have that final senior year transcript yet. And so they use the Common App to glean, how many AP classes or IB classes is this student taking, or honors, or maybe this school doesn't offer any of those things, They just want to know what the curriculum is at that point in the context of that school, like Lauren was referring to earlier. Grades as well. Grades come through with the transcript that their college counselor is going to send to the schools. And then testing, a student can self-report their testing in the Common Application, which often can save a student and a family money, because a lot of these colleges out there, they will accept self-reported testing.
Just a note on that, because I'm going to forget if I let you get to the end.
Yeah.
You do need to verify, and we can help you with that. Some schools, even if you self-report, do require official testing, or they won't consider your application complete. So definitely check on that.
Yeah, and there's other schools too where, for instance, they won't accept a super score of a test, so you can't essentially report the highest subsection of a test. They require you send all of your testing, and so those are things that your college advisor can help you figure out. So we will definitely assist you with those determinations. What we all are working on with our students right now are inputting their extracurricular activities into their Common Application and how to showcase those activities in the most effective way. And so that's like emphasizing any type of leadership that the student's been involved in, or any maybe like community service impact, or maybe they take care of family members or pets or things like that. A college wants to know what a student is doing outside of the classroom. And so we help students prepare to present that information in a very effective way, and in a way that also showcases their values. And students also list out their honors and awards. If they've gotten any type of award or recognition in high school, the Common App cares about high school, then they're going to list that in their Common App. And then we referred a little bit to teacher recommendations earlier in the presentation, but the student will have 2 teachers write on their behalf, and then the school counselor will also write a letter of recommendation that will be attached to their transcript and the school report that Lauren was talking about. The personal statement, as I had mentioned earlier, is going to be worked on starting in June, and that's the main essay. That's like one essay they got to write, and it goes off to all of the colleges that they apply to, so that's pretty nice. And that's a 650-word essay that goes into the Common App. And then, as I had mentioned, the Common App is going to go live this year on August 1st, and that's when students can go into Common App and they can add the colleges that they're going to apply to, and then they can click on them and see their supplemental questions. So I keep using Boston College as an example, but Boston College, it starts with a B. They all have questions that they want to know specifically from that student. What school is that student applying to? What major? Tell us more about the family, etc. Whatever's valuable to that institution. So they're going to ask these supplemental questions, and alongside that comes a supplemental essay, like tell us more about why you want to go to Boston College, for instance. So these are all of the things that your student or the student's going to be working on, and that college advisors are going to assist them with as well. And Lauren, do you have anything to add to this slide?
I do. Just a couple things, just while they're on my mind. There's a lot of concern, understandably, about the impact of COVID on students' ability to engage in a lot of activities. Also, I know a lot of high schools sometimes have limited on-site options for students to get involved in extracurricular activities, or it may not be culturally as common for students to get involved. These are very important parts of telling your personal story. So first of all, in terms of COVID, colleges are very appreciative and understanding of the impact it's had on students' ability to get involved in the kinds of opportunities that existed before COVID. And, your college advisor is going to help you communicate through your application all of the things you have accomplished, but also help the reader of your application understand if there are any gaps or any reason that your extracurriculars are not quite as robust as you might have liked them to be.
I'll also piggyback off of that and say that in the Common App, we should have had this. I didn't think about this one, but there is a COVID-19 essay prompt there. And it basically says if you've had anything happen to you as a result of COVID-19, here's a space to talk about those things. And so just branching off of what Lauren's saying, they also provide an opportunity to talk about, whether that includes a hardship, or maybe you've added an extracurricular activity to your list based on COVID. Maybe you're helping somebody, at one point you're helping them bring groceries to their house or whatever that is. They give you the opportunity to expand on that as well. And I think we have Lauren talking next about how to stand out in the application process.
Yeah, I think, the ultimate question is if you're academically qualified to apply to a particular college on your list, and that largely is determined based on your curriculum and your academic performance. Colleges are not hiding this data. It's very easy to see how rigorous the application process is, what the demographics are of admitted students. So if you are already competitive, how do you make an impression on the reader of your application? How do you become memorable? And this is really important. And I think it's a lot to ask of 17 and 18-year-olds, but the more thoughtful and honest and genuine you are, the more you're going to resonate with a reader. It's very important that your application is flawless in the sense that you don't want sloppy typos. You want everything to be neat and double checked and really well written, but don't forsake your voice and your personality for perfection. It's going to be, I can tell you from experience, and I'm sure Mattie and Olivia have the same stories, that, in 2 weeks, you've read hundreds and hundreds of applications. There are stories that are going to stick with you, but you may not be able to remember what classes they took or what their scores were. Your voice, your ability to communicate, your warmth or your humor, your unique situation or something about you is the thing ultimately that is going to have the biggest impact if you are already academically qualified for admission. And part of that is exactly this, in terms of the mutual good fit really does pertain to, are you the right academic caliber, but also, are you the right personality? Is that college the right personality for you? I think that there are 4,000 colleges in the US alone. There are a lot of great schools out there. And I think it's really important to put a lot of thought into the college search process so that there is an intuitive connection. It's a kind of feedback loop where the people reading your application are going to see things in you that they want to attract to the college. They're going to see reflected back at them the things that you liked about the college, the reasons that you're applying. And that is going to make an impression and make you stand out more in the process. So I think Mattie talked about demonstrated interest earlier on. Not every college uses demonstrated interest in terms of evaluating applicants. Basically, what it means is, what steps have you gone to get better informed about the college? Have you done a virtual or in-person tour or information session? Have you gone onto the admission website and registered yourself? if they're sending you emails, I hate that it's gotten to this point, but have you actually opened the emails and clicked the links? Some colleges are even checking that. Typically, the smaller schools are a little more compelled by demonstrated interest, but that's a gross generalization. Every college is different. And the way this will come into play is if a college is looking at 4 or 5 students for one last spot, and all of the students are very similar in every regard, but one of those students has taken measures to become familiar with the college, has had an interview, has come to the campus or done a virtual info session, has really shown their interest, that student is more likely to be admitted, because what that does is it increases the chances that that student will yield and accept their spot if it's been offered to them. Students, I think, get a little frantic, and I think maybe more honestly, parents get a little frantic about this more than their children, that they're kind of urging that there's that sensation you've got to run around and do a lot of different things, and you've got to do this club, and you've got to do community service, and you've got to try this, and you've got to try that. Colleges really want to see students' depth and passion in the activities they're involved in, or the academics they're involved in. They would much rather a student have 4 extracurricular activities of genuine meaning and impact in that student's life than see a student with 10 activities that they've only grazed the surface of. And I don't necessarily mean leadership. There are phenomenal students who are behind the scenes, deeply active and engaged in their clubs and organizations, and are not leaders of those clubs and organizations, and colleges have tremendous respect for that. But they're looking for that genuine passion, that I'm doing this because I love it and it's meaningful to me and it gives something back to the people around me because I do it with joy, not the I'm doing this because it's going to look good on my college applications. And again, it's the impact, whether that for you is leadership, whether it's more the behind the scenes. Colleges want to see kind of the scope of your involvement. Sometimes it comes down to initiative. If you see a hole in a club or activity and you take the leadership to get something going, if you see a community need and you get involved in a new initiative, there's so many different ways to have an impact, and it can be a very quiet and very powerful impact. Maybe you're a best buddy and you're helping someone in your school who's got a learning difference to navigate high school. That's not showy, but it's really powerful, and colleges really relate to that. And I think for the thoughtful and well prepared, it's really, you don't want to find yourself in a position where you're rushing through your applications. And I think this speaks to the kind of being genuine part of it, that it's going to have the most impact. It's going to help you stand out the most if you've really done the research. I equate this a little bit like, in the spring and you want to grow a garden and you go out there and the earth is freshly tilled and you have a handful of seeds and you just throw them out there and you'll probably get some flowers. But if you go out there and you've really carefully kind of put each seed in its little spot and you go out and water it and really help it grow, you're going to have a quite beautiful garden at the end of that. And the college application process is a little bit like that. It takes thought, it takes work, and it takes patience. And then sometimes you just have to see what grows from your efforts. And this is a big one where we have students kind of often saying, well, I want to apply as a business major, but they have no kind of higher level math classes, or if they're US students, no AP or advanced math classes, or they have no extracurricular activities that might be in that business sphere. It's really important to have that kind of consistency where the beginning of your application and the end of your application, there's a nice string going through them, and that's your story, it's your narrative. Then everything lines up, where if this is what you're interested in, the reader can look back and trace how that interest grew, the ways that you've chosen to get involved, that you've sought out opportunities intellectually or in terms of activities to deepen your knowledge in those areas. So, sorry, Olivia, sorry about that. One last thing about that. Sometimes students will ask, well, is it easier to get in as a, philosophy major? Because there are fewer people who want to be philosophy majors. And that can be kind of a dangerous game in this, because again, colleges are kind of looking for that consistency, that thematic alignment within your application. Thank you.
I wanted to add to this real quick. And Lauren, I'm going to use that garden analogy from now on because that's perfect. But I was going to say that I think this is on my mind recently because I just had this conversation with one of my students who had mentioned to me, do I need to have like a harrowing story in my life in order to stand out in this process, or something traumatic that's happened to me or something like that? She was feeling lesser because she didn't have that type of experience. And I think I just wanted to clarify for vulnerability, it doesn't have to be something, a hardship in the past. It can also just be like really genuinely talking about your story, as Lauren had mentioned. And that could be like, maybe in your personal statement, you're going to tell us about how you're obsessed with Korean dramas and how that relates to your life, or whatever that specific thing is to you. I think oftentimes students feel like they need to figure out like, what is a Yale student and how can I be that person? And oftentimes what colleges are looking for is like, actually how are you different from the rest of the community, because they really value diversity. And so I think also what I just wanted to emphasize here is like, we want students to be themselves, and it sounds so cliche, but that's honestly what we're getting to the bottom of here as well. And I'm segueing myself into the next slide. All right, so we've told you all these things about the common application and how to stand out. But now, when are the applications actually due? And there are various application rounds that we're going to talk about here. The first that comes around is early decision. And actually, I say the first, although there are a couple of schools with early action deadlines in October, and I'll talk about early action in a second. Early decision tends to be, it always is, a binding commitment. And so essentially it's a one-on-one agreement with a college, and you're sort of like mirroring that college. You are saying that if I get into X school, that I'm going to attend that institution. What's nice about this is that you apply early and you find out in December, typically the first week of December, if you got into that specific school. Why early decision is also nice is because it tends to have the highest acceptance rate of all of the decision rounds. And so we oftentimes encourage students, if you are super passionate about a specific college or university, please consider early decision, because that's your best chance of getting in. It's not for everybody. And we definitely work with students where they're not ready to make that commitment because they want to compare other colleges. They want to look at other, financial aid packages, whatever that is. So it is definitely a big decision, but for many students, it's the right one because they love a school so much, and this gives them the highest statistical advantage. And yes, I'm reading the other bullet points here that I think I've covered. And then we move into early action. So as I had mentioned, there are a couple of schools with early action deadlines in October. A majority of early action also falls on the same day as early decision, November 1st. Sometimes there's these November 15th early action deadlines. Early action is very similar to early decision in that it comes early and you apply early. The difference between early decision and early action is that with early action, you are not making a binding commitment to that school. So if you apply, you do not need to attend that specific institution, and you still have till May 1st to make that final commitment to X school. What's nice about early action, again, you have a higher probability of getting in typically. So there is a higher acceptance rate at most places for early action. You apply earlier and you find out earlier if you get into that place. And so like I had mentioned with early decision, those come out the first week of December typically, and then early action tends to come out the second week of December. It just kind of depends on the institution. And by the way, the colleges will typically email students and say like, we're looking to release on this day. We oftentimes get asked, when is this college going to release? And sometimes it's just dependent on when they're done reading applications. So sometimes they don't even know yet, but they typically make that information known before those decisions go out. And I think and then sorry, really quickly, restrictive early action. A very select few institutions in the United States like Yale, Harvard, Stanford, they have something called restrictive early action. And that's pretty similar to early decision, except it's non-binding. But let's just use Harvard as an example. They'll say, if you apply to us restrictive early action, you cannot apply early decision or early action to any other private college or university in the United States. But again, the difference is with restrictive early action, you're not bound to that school either. So you still have till May 1st to make that final decision. And this is all like sounding confusing as I'm saying it, but your college advisor will work with you one-on-one to figure out what these things mean and what's right for you as a student. And then lastly, we have regular decision, and that is typically on January 1st or mid-January, and that's where colleges receive a majority of their applications. More and more students are going the early rounds these days, but I think regular decision tends to be the most utilized, and students essentially apply in January, and they find out their decision typically by the end of March is when majority of those things come out. Again, non-binding here, so you're not committed to those places, and you have till May 1st. May 1st is a big commitment deadline. When we were in admissions, it was like an exciting time for admission officers too. We'd literally sit in a room and we'd see those enrollments coming through on a big screen that we would project it to and just be like clapping and so excited. So exciting. So May 1st is a big day for admission counselors too, and it's really exciting for everybody. Lauren, do you have anything to add to this one?
Just two super quick things, because I know we want to leave time for questions. It's not every college offers early decision, and not every college offers early action. So just to keep you super confused, it comes down to the individual college. Also, the good news is that you will know, towards the second or so week of December if you've been admitted or not. The bad news is you still will have had to complete all of your other applications, because the last thing we want our students to do is get a deferral or a denial in December and then have 11 other applications they have to do in a 2-week period. So we're not going to let you get into that position. Thank you.
And all those essays will be done by then. I was also going to add to Lauren's point, there's also something called rolling admissions, where you apply to a school and they turn around that decision fairly quickly. And so they don't have like a hard date like early decision or early action. So anyways, yes, your advisor will be there to help you navigate this whole landscape of the decisions here. And then lastly, I think we have one more slide, which I'm going to talk about very quickly. For all of students here, I believe you've probably already been into your Logic Prep dashboard, which is our main website. And when you log in and you click on the colleges tab at the top, you will now find something called the application checklist. Which aligns with everything that we've said during this webinar. But if you want to know what you're going to be working on with your college advisor throughout this year, you can see that month by month. And your college advisor is also going to be tracking that on the back end to check all these things off to make sure that you're doing fine and that everything is going to happen on time so that those applications can get out the door on time. And then for parents who are on this webinar as well, typically our administrative teams will email you with information about how to log into your student's dashboard. If you don't have that information, feel free to reach out to your college advisor who can ping the administrative teams to send that information. But if you as a parent want to see these deliverables as well, you can certainly do that. And then the Logic Prep dashboard will also have your college list. So once you solidify those top 12 schools, they will be listed there with various information that's helpful, like whether or not they're on the common application, if they require the TOEFL, the respective deadline that you're applying under, things like that. So it's really a good idea to familiarize yourself with Logic Prep's dashboard, and your advisor can help you if you don't know how to do that yet. And now we're at 45 after the hour, so I think we want to allow for some questions. So what questions do you all have?
Well, the first question that I'm seeing here in the Q&A is a really good question about what happens when you get deferred or waitlisted. What does that mean? What are your chances of getting accepted in either of those cases? So if you want to talk kind of separately, let's talk about deferrals, and then we'll also talk about waitlist as a separate entity.
Sure. Deferrals are uniquely for any early application. So if you apply to a college early action or early decision, there are going to be three outcomes. You're either going to be admitted, you're going to be denied outright, or you're going to be deferred. When you're deferred, it's a courtesy. The college is saying you are admissible, but we're not quite sure you're rising to the surface, and we want to reevaluate your application in the regular decision pool after we've gotten all of our other regular decision applications. What that means for a student who's applied to a college early decision, which is, as Mattie said, is binding. If you apply to a college early decision and you are deferred, you are immediately released from that early decision contract. That means you are no longer obligated to attend that school, even if you get admitted down the line in the regular decision process. Waitlist is the equivalent of that process for the regular decision. So you apply to a school in the beginning of January, you will find out usually anytime between March and April if you've been admitted, if you've been waitlisted, again, basically saying, we like you, we think you are admissible, but we don't really have room for you. And we're offering you a chance to hang out on our waitlist and see if the spot opens up. Or you will be denied outright. The question about the viability of being on a wait list or being deferred is a great one. And the answer, unfortunately, is that it varies wildly from school to school. Some of the larger schools with a lot of movement might be able to yield more students off the wait list or deferred students in the regular decision pool. It's not common. Usually if a student is deferred, it is unusual for them to be admitted in the regular decision process, although we've certainly had some of that happen this year at Logic Prep, and it definitely can happen. If you are deferred, if you are waitlisted, your college advisor is going to help you figure out the strategy. Some colleges will accept letters or additional information. Others have very strict limitations on the kind of contact they want to have with you, but your college advisor is going to help you navigate that and plan out your next steps very carefully.
I was also going to add on that, especially right now, we're in April, and so our students have received all of their decisions. And I've gotten this question often asked a lot, which is, I don't want to commit to a school right now because I'm waiting for the wait list to come out from this other institution. That does not happen until after May 1st. And so what a student needs to do is commit to a school by May 1st. And then that's when colleges look at their entire list of students and say, actually, we have 50 more spots. So now we can go to the wait list. They have to wait till after May 1st to make that determination. And then they go to their wait list at that point in time. So what that means, the student's already committed somewhere else. They've paid a commitment deposit. If they get off the wait list at this other place and they decide they want to go to that school, they essentially just commit and then they lose the money for that other institution that they committed to. So I just wanted to express that because I know there's some confusion about like when schools go to the wait list.
And that's also just for me kind of a courtesy comment. As you guys are going through this, as you're getting to the point this time next year, if you're kind of going back and forth between a couple of schools, but you know there are 5 schools you got into you definitely are not going to, the sooner you tell a college you're not going there, the sooner some poor kid on the wait list might find out that they've gotten admitted. So that's kind of a courtesy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one quick example I can give you guys that might help with the numbers on this stuff is like when it comes to deferrals, a lot of top colleges will say if you get deferred from early decision or early action, your chances of being admitted are roughly the same as a regular decision applicant who just submitted their application in January.
Mm-hmm.
So that's most common for most colleges when it comes to deferrals. There's a couple schools that really keep their early action admission rates low and they defer a lot of students. Like USC just started this, and Georgetown is another one that does this a lot, where they defer the vast majority of their early action candidates and admit a larger percentage of them in the regular round. And then as far as waitlisting, just a quick example, like Yale reported the other day that they, in the last like 3 to 5 years or something, they have admitted between 200 and 300 people off of their wait list. So there's a very big difference on any given year of how many people could possibly get off the wait list at a certain school. And there's no way for you to know that ahead of time.
And we have a question here about early decision 1 and 2. I realized that I totally did not talk about early decision 2 when I was talking about deadlines. But there is something called early decision 2, and it has the same stipulations as early decision 1. The difference is that it comes later in the year. Typically, early decision 2 is either January 1st or January 15th. And so by that time, students have already heard back from early decision 1 and early action schools, and they can therefore make the determination, am I going to apply to a school early decision 2? So let's just use the example. If I apply to New York University early decision 1 and I get deferred, okay, now what now? Should I actually apply to a school early decision 2 or not? And this is a nice additional opportunity to express extreme interest in a school. So like, say I didn't get into NYU ED1, right? But now I want to apply to Bentley University early decision 2 and tell them that's, my top choice. They don't know if it's your second or top choice at that point in time. They can make that binding agreement with that institution and have a higher probability of getting in. And by the way, those decisions for early decision 2 come out around like mid-February. So it's essentially like, I always see the decision plans as a funnel. We have ED1, early action, ED2, regular decision. In terms of selectivity, it kind of comes down that way. But yeah, and oftentimes I'll also add this, that sometimes a school might prompt a student, say like, hey, now that you've received your early decisions, do you want to actually elevate your application, your regular decision application to University of Miami to early decision 2. So the schools are trying to be strategic with it as well. But it's essentially just a time thing, right? Like if you want to apply to one school early decision 1 and make that ultimate commitment, and maybe you don't get in, and so you want to try at your second favorite school early decision 2 with a higher probability. That's why schools utilize early decision 2. Hopefully I explained that well.
We have a couple of questions that people sent in ahead of time as well. And one of them is, I think really interesting, is like, how do we decide between our two, if you have say 2 favorite colleges or 3 favorite colleges, you can't decide between, what goes into making that decision at the end of the day?
That's such a good question. I think I'm a little bit unpopular in this regard, but I really encourage students to focus a lot on the quality of that fit. Can you visualize yourself on this campus? When you look around, are these people you would want to be friends with and hang out with? Look at the major. Look at the academic offerings, look at the majors, look at some of the course descriptions. If you're really interested in science research, go to that specific department, see what the faculty is working on. Make sure you like the facilities. Are the buildings well maintained? When you visit the campus or when you're doing a virtual tour, does it look like people are engaged and interacting with one another? What is the culture, the climate, the political climate on that campus? Are there particular things you cannot live without? Vegan food in the dining hall, or being close to water, or a certain climate. Sometimes it is an almost impossible decision to make until you turn off your head a little bit and tune in a little bit more to your heart. I am a firm believer that students will thrive wherever they end up. And I think the happier you are, the better the quality of that fit, the more likely you are to be successful in that 4 years and beyond. Having said that, sometimes it is a little bit of strategy. If there are 3 colleges and you love them all equally, and academically you're a much better fit for one of them, and you have better chances of being admitted to that college because of that, that might be one of the things that helps solidify that decision for you.
I was also going to add that in April, they have admitted student programming. Typically, a lot of these schools do, which can include in-person events like Admitted Student Day at Bentley University. And you can go and do everything that Lauren's talking about, right? Like meet with professors, meet with peers, take a campus tour, like get the full scope of the campus. And then with COVID came a bunch of virtual opportunities as well. And so these institutions are putting on virtual admitted student days and things like that. So like needless to say, I think you should take advantage of all of the visit opportunities that are available to you to make that final determination. And then I also agree with Lauren, it's kind of like an intuition thing, like turning off your brain and like feeling it, and really leaning into the intuition piece too, I think. But yeah, I would definitely talk to students, talk to professors. We could probably find you somebody that used to work with Logic Prep that goes to that school, so you can talk directly to a student currently there. So yeah, we'll help you navigate that too at the end. Good question.
And then it comes down to strategy as well, I think can be helpful in this, like kind of what Lauren was saying, where if you have 2 or 3 schools that feel you are just as excited about them, your application options might be an important thing to think about too. Maybe only one of your 3 colleges offers early decision, and the others only offer early action, which typically has not as high of an acceptance rate as early decision does. So you might, commit your early decision to the one of those schools that offers it, as opposed to doing early action somewhere else. Maybe only one of your colleges offers early decision 2. So you say, okay, I'll pick this one for early decision 1, and then I'll save this one for a potential early decision 2 if I don't get into option A. So you can kind of look at the different decision plans that are available as well and try to strategize around that to give yourself the best shot at any of your favorite schools that you have on your list. All right, and then our last question, when should I ideally start my application process for each stage? And I'm imagining stage here means kind of like your early decision, your early action, your regular. What does that process look like?
I think I will say that, I tried to reference this before. I mean, I think it's a very fluid process, and I think it's the college application process. It has a firm ending the day you submit all your applications, but there are a lot of things you're going to be working on consecutively, and you'll get to one place with one thing and maybe kind of go back to the beginning with something else. So really ideally, I think Mattie talked about this, starting now, kind of building the backbone of the application, getting comfortable with the Common App and working on the activities section, really getting as familiar as possible with a range of different colleges out there, even ones you think you have no interest in. You owe it to yourself to do a lot of research and investigate widely, so that as you're shaping your list with our guidance, you're doing so in a very well-informed and thoughtful way. So kind of working on that process, and then ultimately over the summer, ideally working pretty intensively on essays. It's much better for students to be done with as much writing as they can be before senior year begins. We understand that's not going to be the case for everyone. That's fine. And then really, the application goes live August 1st, and that's when you start seeing all the supplements and filling everything out. The fall is very busy with making final determinations about application strategies. So ideally, it's kind of bite by bite, where you're not trying to eat the whole thing all at once, and we can just help you step by step to move through this process in the way that is best suited to you individually.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you both to Lauren and to Mattie for presenting today. Thank you to all of you for showing up and asking all of these great questions. Please continue to ask questions of your advisor, of the rest of us. We work together as a whole team throughout the advising process. So if one of us doesn't have a specific answer to a specific question, we will pitch it to the rest of the team, and we'll help to kind of crowdsource some information and ideas for each of you throughout this process. We will be sending a follow-up survey after this, so if you don't mind taking a few minutes to tell us how we did and if there's any ways you think we could improve, that would be great. This webinar is recorded and it will be posted on our website. We'll be emailing it out to everyone as well. So if you want to share it with a friend who couldn't make it today, or if you want to rewatch it again by yourself, the link will be available on our LP events page, and we hope to see you at our next event soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.